going on, guys? So if you're debating getting a Yamaha R6 or a leader bike, the R1, I'm going to compare these two bikes head to head today, right now. 2009 Yamaha R6 and a 2006 Yamaha R1. These two bikes are pretty similar, but they have a lot of differences as well. And then you guys can make a judgment call for yourself, which one suits your riding style. So I just flipped the R1 around here so we can get a fair comparison, because I want to talk about the seat height. This is a major difference from the R6 to the R1. You would think the R6, being a smaller bike, would be lower to the ground. This is not true. The seat height is way taller than the R1. It doesn't look like it much in the video here. You can still see it. It's not only the seat height, it's the seat width as well. So I'm gonna give you a close-up. This seat is way wider on the edges compared to the R1. You probably can't see it much in the video, but this is the R1 seat and it's tapered and your legs fit a lot tighter to the bike. So here's a good angle on the seat, the R1. You can see the taper. And let's go to the R6. It's flat, almost all the way across. You're sitting on this bike almost bow-legged. And so because you are sitting on this more or less bow-legged, your legs are going out before they're going down. So it makes the bike feel a lot taller than it is. And if you're a short rider, it can be problematic. My girlfriend's 5'4" and she can barely touch the ground on this. She hops over to my R1, no problem. Can't quite flat foot the R1, but she's close. So not only is the R1 lower, it's longer as well. It's more planted. The swing arm is quite a bit longer than the R6. This makes it more stable at speed. You can touch 300k an hour relatively easy on it. The R6, you can get it up to about 270, 280, but it runs out of power before you really top it out. So with that being said, the R6 does handle a lot nicer in the corners and around town, just because it is so much shorter, and that extra seat height, being off the ground a little higher, it makes it really playful. Like, I actually enjoy riding that 600 around town more than I do the leader bike. And not only is that wheelbase a lot shorter and more playful, it's about 50 pounds lighter too, and that makes a huge difference. You don't think 40-50 pounds is a lot, but even just sitting on these bikes right here, comparing them head to head, it's insane the difference. The R6 is almost just begging to be thrown into corners, and you can ride that bike to the limit. And there's something about riding a bike to the limit that is so satisfying and still feeling in control, safe. The leader bike is very hard to push it to that same limit. It's a lot more challenging, to be a lot more of an experienced rider, and it doesn't have the same fun factor. But then again, sometimes you just want raw power, and that's exhilarating on its own. It's insane how much more power the leader bike has than the 600. Like, it's not even comparable. Don't get me wrong, the R1 still handles great, but when you're comparing it back to back, it's just, they're two different bikes. They really are. In a perfect world, it'd be nice to have both. Whenever you see professional stunters, this is one of the bikes that they choose. The R6 handles so well. A lot of people use it for catwalks, and professional riders use it for stunting, and it handles awesome. It's great, it's reliable, it'll do that all day. I think we can all agree that both of these bikes look amazing. Visually speaking, I do think the R6 looks a little better, and it's probably one of the most sought after bikes to date. Like, it just looks great. The R1 looks good too, but I think the R6 just takes it on this category. Visually, there's not a lot of differences. The R6 has the small side exit pipe. The R1 has twins coming out the back. And just the headlights. The headlights are a main one as well. So the R6, it has two lights, but one's a low beam, one's a high beam. So only one is on at a time. So I'll start it up here, show you the lights, show you the pipe. No raspiness, it sounds so good. So there is the low beam. Just one headlight on at a time. Some people like that, some people don't. You always get people telling me I'm burned out headlight, which is kind of annoying. High beam. So the high beam is the other ball. It would be nice if they kind of had both on at the same time, and a low beam and a high beam for both bulbs. I think there is a mod you can get for that. But this is the stock setup. Moving to the R1. Most crotch rockets have pretty bad lighting at night, so this is a huge bonus on the R1. Even my old CBR, I had two CBR 1000 RRs, and they were a very similar setup to the R6. The lights sucked. Even with HIDs, they were better, but they did not compare to this. My Hondas, I had a 04 1000 RR and an 06. And so this is an 06, very fair comparison. Most people that buy these bikes aren't concerned about fuel mileage, but it's probably worth mentioning. The R6 obviously does get better mileage. Most crotch rockets get about 200k to the tank. We do use these for touring bikes as well. We put 5,000k on last year just touring, so fuel mileage does come into play a little bit. You get about 250k to a tank if you're just touring around on the R6. The R1, you don't really get a whole lot over 200 kilometers. 220, 230, you'd be stretching it. So let's talk about price a little bit. This is something that I find frustrating. You would think a liter bike being almost twice the bike, it'd be twice the price. Definitely not the case. The R6 is such a desirable bike. It actually costs a lot more to find an R6 in good shape with reasonable kilometers. I actually picked up this R1 and I think I paid $2,000 less than the R6. To find a nice R6, you're spending $6, $7, $8,000 for one that's a little bit older. Liter bikes, I don't know why, but you can find liter bikes for $5, $6,000 pretty easy and in good shape, low K. So because the leader bikes are so much cheaper, that was definitely a selling feature for me. I actually bought my first bike, was a 2004 CBR 1000 RR. I bought it for $5,500. It had under 20,000 K, and at the time it was relatively new. And I was actually going to look at an R6, and the R6 was $1,500 more expensive, and it was in worse shape with higher kilometers. So if you have the self-control, I mean, the price talks. And you think you can respect a leader bike? I'd say go for it. If you're a brand new rider, I obviously wouldn't recommend just hopping on a leader bike. If you've had a lot of experience with dirt bikes, I think that does help a lot, learning how a bike handles when you don't have that good of traction, because these do break loose once in a while. I'm a pretty light rider, 150, 160 pounds. In first gear, this bike, it'll either catwalk or break loose for me almost every time. Once you warm the tire up, it's a little bit better, but you always have to be on your A game when you're riding this thing. The R6, you can just hop on it and ring it out. You don't really have to worry about braking traction. It's a lot more carefree. You can just hop on it, have fun, ride it to the limit, and not have to worry about it. So that's a main reason why it's such a popular bike. It's just great all around. It's a very well-rounded bike. The power and the frame, the chassis, it all just blends together so nicely. You don't have to think about it, just use it. And a lot of people love that. I love it. So I think that is one of the main differences why you do spend a little bit more on an R6 compared to the R1. Even if you do have to spend a couple more grand on an R6, if you ever went to sell it, you would get that money back. The market for these things is insane. I've never had an issue selling one of these bikes. People love them. And I don't blame them. It's everything about them. Great bikes. Super reliable. Both these bikes are reliable. Yamaha makes a great engine in anything they put engines in. Yamaha, very tried and true. So with all that being said, I don't think you can go wrong with either of these bikes. They're both great bikes, but hopefully that gives you a little more insight. One of the main differences is the seat height. If you're a new rider, depending on your inseam, you might not like the high seat height of the R6. You might want to look at something different. Not necessarily an R1 if you're a new rider, but something smaller than the R6, just for that seat height. I think it's one of the highest sitting bikes on the market actually, if you did your research. But don't quote me on that, just something to look into. And I'm not going to leave you hanging. Let's do a sound clip of these two bikes. They both sound great. Let's show it off a bit. I'm just going to let them warm up and yeah, let you hear these babies talk. The key to happiness right here. Music to my ears. And now time for the heavy hitter. And remember, this has a header back exhaust. It's all titanium. Sounds great. One of the last major differences here that's worth mentioning is the steering dampener. Most leader bikes come with a factory steering dampener. The 600s do not. So that's a big selling feature for me too. These things work. I've got speed wobble. I hit a bump in the road and your bars kind of do a quick 1-2 and it levels you out right away. And I've done the same thing on the R6 and that little bit of a speed wobble lasts for what feels like an eternity. These things work. I don't know why they don't put them on all bikes. It's a pretty big safety thing. You can add them on after, but they are expensive. View of the R6. Well, they got a lot of real estate here. They could have put one on. They just chose not to. Kind of cheaped out in my opinion, but is what it is. So this is kind of a Yamaha quirk as well. They do have a factory security system. You can see the red light blinking there. All Yamahas come with a red original key. I mean, a security system is always good if somebody's trying to steal your bike, but if you lose the one original red Yamaha key that comes with your bike, this is a black one, you cannot cut new keys. Even if you bring in proof of ownership and everything to the dealership, they will not cut you a key if you do not have the red original Yamaha key. Ran into this before. Went to the dealership with one of our old R6s and we only had one black key and they wouldn't cut us a spare key. And guess what? We ended up losing that black key, so we had no keys. And even with proof of insurance, registration, everything, they wanted to sell us a whole new ignition. They would not sell us or cut us a new key. Very frustrating. And that key and a new ignition was over $1,500. Like, that is absolutely insane. And at the end of the day, let's be real. If somebody's gonna steal your bike, they're gonna steal it anyways. Two guys, they can pick up a crotch rocket like this pretty easy, toss it in the back of a truck, only takes a minute or so. And that security system's not really saving you. And in the real world, it causes more of a hassle and a burden on the owner than anything. So if I had the choice, I really miss my old Honda for that actually. The keys were super cheap, it didn't have a security system like this, and it was just easy. And this isn't a standard security system where your horn's gonna go off, your lights are gonna flash like a car. This just disables the ignition. So somebody can still steal your bike in perfect silence. So again, it doesn't really serve that much of a purpose. It's more of a burden. Big fail on Yamaha on that part, So there you have it, guys. Hopefully this video gave you some more insight and you can make an informed decision on which bike would suit your riding style better.